Hello, I'm Bud McCord. I'm here in Brazil, South America. It's the 22nd of December, 2020. I hope that you're well. It's time again for Food for Thought, Thinking with Jesus. I want to encourage you to, as a believer in Jesus Christ, to cultivate your ability to think with the mind of Christ, to be one with the mind, emotions, and will of God through Jesus Christ. It's a life-changing experience to be able to take every thought captive to Jesus Christ. Our subject for today is Life's Classroom. Life's Classroom. I wrote this devotional many years ago when I was trying to understand how God is working with all of humanity at the same time. There's a verse in the book of Acts where the Apostle Paul talks about the fact that God created of all of us of one blood, and that God is continuously creating circumstances so that human beings can connect with Him. And one of the most important things in the life for a missionary, for example, someone like me who's living here in Brazil, Pam and I ministering here in Brazil, we believe that God at this very moment is working with every single human being, because He wants a connection with every single human being. And the title of this particular devotional is Life's Classroom. And I want to talk to you about how God is working with all 7 billion people on the planet and the way that He works with you as well. There's a quote in this devotional by E. Stanley Jones, and he was perhaps the greatest missionary of the past century. He spent 55 years in India, was a Methodist missionary, and he said this: "Oh God, you teach us the way through Christ and catastrophe. Oh God, you teach us the way through Christ and catastrophe." Let me read the devotional, then we'll think together, and then we can take each one of us our thoughts to Jesus, and as always should be, He will be the final word in everything that we think. Our day today, this day is given to us to experience in this world that we are in life's classroom, where we discover the way or not the way. Every moment of every day is an opportunity to see what cooperates with God's original plan for mankind and what does not cooperate. To be absolutely sure we can see the way and what is not the way, God sent Jesus, who is the way made flesh and dwelling among us. To see Jesus is to see God's original intention for human life and love. Jesus was not and never will be the cause of human catastrophe. He is and will ever be the way out of human catastrophe. If we will open our eyes to God as we move through every day, we will see clearly what produces life and love and what produces fear and death. We will see that our decisions and behaviors have predictable results. None of us can say we saw nothing of the true way. The way is written into our DNA by God, and we are all enrolled at birth in Class 101, the way or not the way. When Jesus makes a permanent connection by His Spirit with any human being, life's classroom moves into our inner life, where Jesus begins to live and teach by His Spirit. This inner teaching about the way becomes more intense and personal. We begin to see catastrophes and their impact more clearly, and the pain we feel seeing so clearly would overwhelm us if it were not for Jesus revealing to us moment by moment God's forgiveness and love. I think just by the way that I wrote this devotion, I can tell I was struggling with this subject of how God is working with all human beings across the planet. It's not an easy thought, but it is a thought I think we can capture in one particular passage of the Scriptures which illustrates this beautifully. It's in Psalm chapter 1. And I would hope that today you would read several times Psalm 1 and meditate on the words that are here. Listen to these words from Psalm 1. It says this: Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by rivers of water that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. This contrast of the people in the Old Testament, the people in the Jewish nation that had been chosen by God to be an example to the world of what works and what does not work, what combines or matches with God or what does not match with God. He said that there are people who meditate in the law of God night and day. Why did God give the law? The law was not given so that we could be saved by the law, but the law was given to show us where peace and love will function and where catastrophe is waiting to happen. The meditation on the law is given so that we will know when and where and how love or justice stops. And when our primary motivation in being in the world is to not stop the flow of the love of God, that is where the law came in and taught the nation of Israel that there was a way to be in the world that did not create catastrophes, but created solutions, peace and joy and fruitfulness. Now, so that we would not lose this, God sends Jesus into the world, and he is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but by him. The law would not get us all the way back to the Father. The law would make us people who could visibly manifest the benefits of living the laws of God. But to get back to the Father, it would take Jesus coming and dying for us and then living in us as he lives in every believer right now. So every human being on the planet right now is in a position to, by God's grace, understand by observation, kind of a show and tell. God is producing for every single human being a show and tell. This produces peace. This produces catastrophe. This produces love. This produces hate. This produces abundance. This produces poverty. And we're living in God's classroom, all of us on this planet. And if we will pay attention, we can see what is God and what is not of God. In Romans chapter 1, listen to these verses. They're incredible. It says this, for the wrath of God. Now, when you think of the wrath of God, don't think of God being angry with a particular person. It's like the wrath of reality. In other words, if you dive into the ocean and you swim out into the ocean 5 miles and you don't have the energy to swim back, then you will discover the wrath of the ocean. In other words, the wrath is what happens when you do things that produce catastrophe rather than produce love. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, the men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them. This is incredible. It says, what may be known of God is made available for every human being to perceive, for God has shown it to them. If you're wondering whether or not human beings are having at this moment an opportunity to see the difference between peace, love, prosperity, and joy and catastrophe, you can be sure of this. They can see it. They can see it. They can describe it. And many of the things in religion around the world are good descriptions of what men and women can see. But what they need to actually see, and what we as believers have seen, is that the law can only take us so far in our understanding. Then we need a personal experience with love, joy, and peace, and long-suffering, and gentleness, and meekness. And we only get that by the Spirit of Christ. As a missionary working overseas and dealing with people in a language and in a context where I was not born, it has become incredibly important to me to know that God is working with every single person on the planet. They are in life's classroom. And in life's classroom, if we will pay attention, we will begin to discern the difference between peace, prosperity, justice, and love, and the catastrophe that sin is and makes in the world. And then we will cry out to God, and He will send someone in whom Christ lives to simply point, lift Jesus up, and then Jesus will draw all people to Himself. My job is to just pay attention and be ready, because people out in the world are in the classroom of God's show and tell. And if they'll pay attention, they'll see catastrophe, and then they'll see something that's the opposite of that. And they will begin to move in the direction of an encounter with God. And then God may mobilize me, or He may mobilize you to be the person who says, it's not me, it's Him. And you just point them to Jesus, and He draws them. And then He takes them back to the Father. I hope you'll think about these things. Read Psalm 1, and you can very clearly see that there is a path toward catastrophe, and there's a path toward peace and abundance found in God. So clear. It's so clear. Then go and read another passage like Psalm 23 or the Beatitudes, and it'll become clear to you. Take these thoughts to Jesus. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you this morning. Lord willing, we'll get together again tomorrow morning, and we'll learn to think with Jesus. God bless you.